Hi fourth graders. Today we're going to shade in that Leonardo machine we drew last time. So we're just going to use a regular old pencil to shade this today. But before we shade it, we have to think, we kind of have to use our imaginations actually. Oops, forgot something. There we go. Now it's perfect. So we have to think about where the light's coming from. We don't know where to put the shadows if we don't know where the light's coming from. And when Leonardo shaded his drawings, he invented the whole thing. So he thought about where the light was coming from too. So really just pick the left side or the right side. This corner or this corner. I'm going to say the light's coming from the left. Now if you want, you could draw the sun up there, or a light bulb, or a candle, or an arrow, or whatever you want. But you just have to remember the light's coming from that side. You could pick the right too, it's up to you. But whatever side the light's on, the shadows are going to be on the other side. So just like when we drew a ball in a box, or a sphere in a cube, we picked a side, and the light was hitting it, so these sides were going to be light, and the other side would be dark. You know, same thing with the ball. This side would be light, these sides would be dark. And we did value scales to practice. So, you know, on objects that have flat sides, like this cube, we did values where you just shaded in the shape real solid, different grays. If it's a round object like this ball, then you have to fade the shadow because round things turn away from the light, so the shadow slowly appears. Okay? So some of these things are round and some of these things have flat sides. And some have both, like this wheel has a flat side and a round side. So you just have to think about that. If it's flat, it gets a solid value, like that. If it's round, it gets a faded value. Okay? And now I know where my light's coming from because I picked the left side. So I'll just start with this cylinder here. So the light's coming, right? And it's hitting this side of the cylinder. So I don't need to shade this side. I do need to shade the other side. That's in the shadow. It's facing away from the light. So this side of the cylinder is going to be dark. But it's also round. So I have to fade into the light, right? I can't just draw a line down the middle. This side's dark, this side's light. It's a round object, so I have to fade it. So I'm going to start shading this side of it. But as I come over here toward the light, I'm going to not push down as hard with my pencil. I'm still shading, but I'm not pushing down as hard. And that's what's going to make it look round. So now I'm barely touching the paper because I don't want any hard marks here. I don't want to make any dark values. And then you can go back through and fix it. You can also use a Q-tip or twisted up tissue to smudge it. Here's another cylinder. I can do that the same way. Dark on this side, light on the other, but I'm going to fade it. That's what's going to make it look round. Okay? If it's a solid flat thing like this, big box down here, then it gets these flat values, just shaded in whatever gray you want. So the light's coming from above, and it's hitting the top of this box, so I'm not really going to shade the top of this box at all. This side is kind of facing me. It's not really facing the sun so much, but still it might get some light. So I'm going to shade this whole side here. But I'm being really careful. I just want it to be solid gray. I don't want it to get darker or lighter. Just one solid light gray here. And then I can see one more side of this box, and the light's over there, and this is facing that way. So this is going to be really dark because it's not getting any direct light. Sunlight, light from a candle, light from a lamp. It's all the same thing. Okay? So you just got to think about it. Is it round? So if I have a cylinder like this is weird because it's pointing at the light. Well, in this case, just pretend it's horizontal. It's diagonal. But I'm going to pretend it's horizontal. It's close enough. In which case you got to decide, is the light above it or below it? Well, it's above it. So, and light usually comes from above. So I'm going to make the dark side of the cylinder, the bottom side. And it's round, so I gotta fade it. Alright, this wheel is a flat surface. It's the same as this surface. So I'm gonna shade this the same value, just a solid light gray. And I'm not fading it because this side of the wheel is flat. You don't fade it if it's flat. This side of the wheel is round, and we know the top is going to be light and the bottom is going to be dark, just like this. And it's round, so I have to fade it. So it's going to start out dark, and as I go up it's going to get gradually lighter. Just like that. And I'll do all the wheels that way. There we go. These are cylinders down here. The bottom's going to be dark, the top's going to be light, and I'm going to fade it. Here's a cylinder that's vertical, it's up and down. The right side's going to be dark, and then I'm going to fade it. Here's a cylinder that's going like that. The light's coming from above, so the shadow will be on the bottom, and I'll fade as it goes up into the light. Here's a cylinder that's vertical, light's on the left. So just like this big pipe right here, I'm going to make this little one the same way. And I got to try to fade that one too. I'm going to go through and do all these cylinders real quick. So now the cylinders look 3D because I shaded them. These things are called elbows. And if you have elbows on pipes, or if you have something that is like a hose and it curves and it changes, the shadow's going to change. Right? It's not always going to be on the same side depending on which way it turns. So let me just show you a little trick here. You've got to remember that the light is coming from up here somewhere, right? So when it comes down and hits this, this will be light, this will be dark. And it's round, so you're going to fade it too. But then as this elbow curves, it switches. And the light is going to be on top and the shadow is going to be on the bottom. So this shadow will just kind of disappear into the edge like that. So that's how you'd shade something that changes direction. So it's tricky, you got to think about it. If it's a cylinder and it is pointing right at the light, it's okay to make like the edges dark and then have it fade in. That's actually something Leonardo did when he painted the Mona Lisa, and he got real famous for that. It's called sfumato. And sfumato is an Italian word that means the edges disappear into smoke. So it's a pretty advanced art trick, but that's what he did there basically. The edges are dark and then it fades in. So you can do that too. Just as long as everything has light and dark on it. So here's a ball right here. You already know how to shade a ball from doing this project, right? So it's the same way. Shadow's round like a banana, but the ball's round, so it needs to fade into the light like that. And actually these little things in the middle of the wheel, I'm going to make them look like spheres too. Like the head of a bolt that's holding the wheel on. So the goal today is to make your machine look as realistic as possible, like Leonardo da Vinci's drawings. And the trick to that is just knowing there's different ways to create different values, knowing when and where to use them, okay, and then picking a light source and knowing that the shadows are always going to be away from the light, or they're going to be on the other side. Oh, and one more thing, if there's a hole, you just make it black. Here's a hole where the smoke's coming out, so I'll just push down real hard and make it black. All these holes. Here's a hole where the pencils go in for my machine. Here's a hole in this cone. Okay. Holes, just make them solid black, solid dark value. Just like that. And every single part to your machine, no matter how small it is, should have light and dark on it. Every single little part. So take your time, look through it. The smoke, it's a bumpy shape, or it's like an organic shape we call it. So I gave it an organic edge to the shadow. And that just helps it look more like smoke. But there you go. Have fun with this. Take your time. Think about where the light's coming from. and trying to make it look realistic using shadows. Work hard and have fun.